I think no matter what your age or stage, I think it's beneficial now to learn about your body, educate the next generation so that they know better and then they know more.
Welcome back. We are in our health and wellness series, and today is a great day to be here. I do want to warn you that if you have little kids listening and they are in the car or they're in the room, they're watching with you on YouTube, and you don't want to have the most awkward conversation ever with a 7-year-old, you may want to listen to this later. I'm going to give you a second just to turn this podcast off, listen to it later when you don't have to have that follow-up conversation or a lot of little questions. Ready? Go. Okay, now, today we're going there. We're talking about something that most women deal with, but almost nobody talks about, and that's our pelvic health. If you have ever wondered if leaking or painful sex or pelvic floor issues are just part of being a woman, this episode is for you. My guest is Dr. Sara Reardon. She is better known by her Instagram handle of the Vagina Whisperer. She's a board-certified pelvic floor physical therapist who has built a global platform helping women stop suffering in silence and finally get the answers they deserve. We love that. So Sara and I dig into everything from the truth about Kegels to why doctors often dismiss women's pain to what every woman over 40 needs to know about her pelvic floor. I've read her book. I follow her. I still learned a ton on this episode, just getting to talk to her today. This conversation is eye-opening. It's practical, and maybe even, actually, I'm going to say probably it's going to be life-changing for you. You're going to get answers to questions you didn't even know you could ask. Okay, let's dive in with Sara. Sara, welcome to the show. I have been doing this show, 7 years now, and I've never had anyone on with such a cool nickname. You are the Vagina Whisperer. I want to know, how long has that been your moniker? How did you come by it? Give us the scoop.
Thanks so much for having me, Allie. So I am a board-certified pelvic floor physical therapist. I've been practicing for 18 years. And when I started practicing, I jumped right into the specialty of pelvic floor health, particularly for women. And all of my girlfriends at the time started calling me the Vagina Whisperer because they would come to me with questions about, childbirth and pregnancy. And then even their moms would start talking to me about their bladder leaks. And so I started my Instagram account in 2016 or 17 when I was pregnant with my second son. And it was for this group of girlfriends who kept kind of wanting questions and preparation tips. And so I called it the Vagina Whisperer because that was their nickname for me.
It is amazing. I've talked to so many of my friends. I had a call with my team this morning. I was like, by the way, let's stop talking about business for a second because I have a call with a doctor and she's going to change our lives. So I have so many questions for you, but I want to start off with just something that I think most women need to be educated on. And that's, what's the biggest lie that women believe about the pelvic floor?
I think that there's two, actually. I mean, there's a whole laundry list, but I would say the two biggest ones are that bladder leaks, pain with sex, pelvic floor changes are just a normal part of postpartum or aging or postmenopause, and that it's just something we have to deal with. That's a lie. We've been told this narrative our entire lives, and it's not true because there are so many things that are out there, including pelvic floor therapy, that can help. I think the second lie is that Kegels are the answer for all pelvic floor problems, and that is also not true. A lot of women have pelvic floor tension, or they're not doing Kegels properly, and that can actually make their conditions worse if they're just doing Kegels. So we need to shift that narrative to be a much more individualized exercise plan than just do your Kegels.
Okay, this is great because one of the women I was talking to, she said, it turns out I have too much tension and I'm not supposed to do Kegels. She said, 2 questions. I want you to ask her, how do you know whether you're carrying too much tension or your pelvic floor is weak? And are Kegels good? Are Kegels bad? What's the insight here?
And the answer to those is so connected. So, in my book, Floor, that came out this summer, I actually give you a checklist of things to kind of look at to say, like, Do I have tension or do I have weakness? I also have a quiz on my website that you can take. My website's thevaginawhisperer.com. And it kind of walks you through like, what are the symptoms you're experiencing? Now, you can have bladder leakage and also have tension, but more often there are kind of a variety of things that are going on. So one, I would say you can do a self-assessment by using your mirror, using a finger. You can kind of go down this checklist that I have or take the quiz that I give you. And then also you can see a pelvic floor specialist to let you know, actually, your muscles are too tense and Kegels aren't the right thing for you. I would say more often some of the things that fall into the tension bucket are things like painful sex, difficulty starting your urine stream, straining with bowel movements, hemorrhoids, fissures, tailbone pain, hip pain, things like that. Often with weakness, which would require some strengthening, which includes Kegel exercises or things like leakage and prolapse. But again, you can have tension and also have leakage. You can have tension and also have prolapse. You need to address the tension piece first. Now, Kegels are pelvic floor contractions. So this is very similar to when you have your arm straight out and you bend your elbow, you flex your bicep. It's the same thing. Your pelvic floor can contract to hold in urine and stool and tighten the vagina, and that's a Kegel contraction. And they're not good or bad. It's just whether they're appropriate for you. If you have tension, they would not be appropriate for you. If you have weakness, they're a great place to start strengthening, but it's not all you should do. You can't just do Kegels sitting at your desk all day and expect your pelvic floor symptoms to get better. It's much more nuanced than that and much more of a robust exercise program that's needed.
That makes sense. Yeah. If you're already too tight, don't strengthen up.
Right. Don't
That's not the
squeeze
issue.
harder. Right.
Yeah. Okay. I have so many different situations because for every woman, we have a different relationship with our pelvic floor. I'm going to share mine. So, Dr. Vonda Wright, she's been on the show, read all of her books. She convinced me to start jump roping. This is for my bone health. My husband and I have a joke where he can tell how long I'm jump roping in the driveway by how many times I come in and change my pad. It was rough at the beginning. I've been jump roping about 6 months now, and I've learned like I can make it 50 jumps, and then I break, and then I'll do a little lifting, and then I do another 50 jumps. Now, mind you, I have had 5 children vaginally, but that was a long time ago. My baby's 17. I guess I've just had a weak pelvic floor ever since I had those babies.
Yeah. So likely, I think there's so much really rich conversation around how to take care of our bodies with aging and perimenopause and postmenopause and, increasing your bone density and doing strength training and doing higher impact exercises are great. However, no amount of leakage is normal. And it's actually information from our bodies that something's not working the way that we should. And you can modify that. There are great ways to increase your bone density that don't involve jumping rope and leaking. Some of the things that I would think about are, yes, when you have 3 babies or more, if you've pushed for prolonged periods of time, genetics is a factor. If you, strain with urination or bowel movements, if you're postmenopausal, these are all kind of risk factors for developing pelvic floor weakness. Mm-hmm. So I would say, Allie, yes, you're likely in that group. But I think that there are some things that you could do that really kind of, one, you focus on strengthening your pelvic floor, if that's kind of where you need to start. You focus on your posture, your breathing. There are even tips like leaning forward when you're jumping rope or doing single jump ropes instead of double unders or, really specific exercises that can train your pelvic floor for impact. Also, I love what you're doing by stopping after a certain period of time. Because these muscles are like any other muscle in our body. They get fatigued. And so you push them to fatigue. Maybe that's when leakage starts. And then you pause, you break, you do something else, and then you go back to it. And so kind of working under that threshold of leakage or pain is where you want to stay. And now I would also consider an internal bladder support. So they're over-the-counter ones. One's called the Revive, one's called the Uresta, one's called Poison Preza. But you can even get a pessary, which is a bladder support from a medical provider, or you can use a tampon. If you're okay with inserting a tampon, you can use a tampon, and that can actually help support your bladder. So I would try some of these different things because there's a way to do the exercises and not let women feel like they just need to pee their pants to be effective at them. Yes. I'm serious. Okay.
I want to hear the mechanics of how having a tampon in will help support the bladder.
So, there are 3 openings in the pelvic floor in female bodies. One is for where urine exits through the urethra and the urinary sphincter.
Mhm.
Right behind that is the vaginal canal for menstruation, vaginal intercourse, vaginal birth. And then right behind that is the rectal canal where, poop exits our body. So your bladder and your urethra sit right in front of that front vaginal canal. And with aging, weakness, pressure, birth, that bladder starts to kind of drop into the front vaginal canal. And that's what we
Mhm.
call prolapse. And then also that urinary sphincter just doesn't stay kind of positioned as well or closed as well. So by inserting a tampon, you're just better supporting that front vaginal wall that your muscles and tissues can't support as well. So it kind of like lifts your bladder a little bit, gives you a little bit more pelvic floor support. So when you're jumping and all that pressure from the impact is going boop, 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 and that's causing the leaks, you've got an internal support in the vagina to kind of hold the bladder in place.
Okay, that is life-changing. But if no amount of leakage is normal, I'm 49 when this airs, with building up more strength in my pelvic floor, I can stop leaking because I can tell you over 6 months, it has been a game changer, but I'm not perfectly there yet.
Yeah. I can't ever promise people that they'll get totally dry. I think we want to think about is like, how can we meet your goals, adjust some of your activities so that you can get meet the needs that your body has, but
Mhm.
then also not kind of contribute to a pelvic floor issue that's not going to get better with time. So I think that some of this is strengthening specifically your pelvic floor. I mean, we focus so much on like core strength and, you know, arm strength and shoulder strength, but like we're not talking about pelvic floor strength, which will decrease every year we age. Our urinary sphincter loses 2% of its strength every year after menopause. So this is why women are getting more leakage as they age. And so
Mhm.
one of the things is how can we get that muscle as strong as possible when we're entering this next phase? The other thing is using topical hormones. I am a fan of using topical estrogen internally, vaginally, and kind of around the urethra. And that's just going to boost up the collagen in the area, kind of make these tissues more lubricated and pliable. And just, again, another thing that can kind of boost your pelvic floor strength. And then looking at even your breathing and your posture and these different things that therapists do so that we can say, okay, actually you've got like a lot of tension in your back, Allie, and you're not breathing well, and that's affecting how your pelvic floor is responding. So I think a little bit of kind of more nuanced kind of exercise planning can help. But yeah, this can get significantly better, and I think it's something that unfortunately, if you keep doing it, it likely won't get better and it will only get worse. And if we want you to keep jump roping, we've got to kind of address this symptom.
No, it's so good. Okay, so you're a fan of topical estrogen. I use an estrogen patch. Is topical that much better? What do I need to know? How
You
does
know,
everything work?
I am not a medical provider physician. I'm a physical therapist, a doctor of PT, but I do
Mhm.
work with a lot of vulvas. And I will tell you, during perimenopause and absolutely postmenopause, your pelvic floor vaginal tissues and vulvar tissues are thinning, they're getting weaker and less supportive. And so topical estrogen goes right to those tissues. The systemic estrogen that you're using is great, and I think a lot of folks benefit from it if they can tolerate it or it's, appropriate for them. But the topical estrogen that goes right to the vagina is specific for we call genitourinary, syndrome of menopause, helps with urinary symptoms, helps with pelvic floor issues. So it's very different than the systemic estrogen from a patch or a pill. So I think that everybody should be on topical estrogen after a certain point, and it's till death do you part. I think you'll only see the benefits of it with not just, leakage or urinary symptoms, but also like more comfortable sex and more lubrication and less dryness, less frequent urination and waking at night to pee. All of those things can really improve.
That would be amazing. Okay, I'm putting topical estrogen on my list because I am cutting myself off of liquids at about I go to bed at 9 every night.
Yeah.
At about 6:30, I'm very dedicated because I value great sleep.
I know. And that's, one of the symptoms. I'm perimenopausal now. I'm almost 43. And my sister the other day was like, I'm starting to wake up at night to pee. And I'm like, this is because you're
Mhm.
in perimenopause. And she's like, what? And I said, yeah, like your bladder health is changing. And so these are the early signs for you to say, like, what do I need to start doing now to help keep my pelvic floor, my bladder health optimal for years to come? And it's things like topical estrogen. If you're not comfortable taking estrogen, you can use what's called the DHEA suppository, which is
Mhm.
like a precursor. So I have some folks who don't want to use estrogen. And so this is another option for them as well.
Oh, that's fascinating. Okay, so now I'm putting you on the hot seat. More situations. One woman I talked to, she said, "This isn't about me, it's my husband. And when he urinates, it flows and it stops and it
Yeah.
flows and it stops." And she said, "He says he's been that way since he was a little kid." Can you
Yeah.
tell us anything about that?
So males have pelvic floors too, which means that males also have pelvic floor problems. And a lot of what we see, if you have symptoms that start when you're really young, a urinary issue, constipation, bedwetting, these sorts of things, I think when we think older men peeing problems, it's like, oh, it's his prostate. But if he's had this for a long time, there's likely two things that could be going on. When you urinate, your bladder fills with urine and it's like a deflated balloon. And as that balloon starts to stretch as urine fills it, it sends a signal to your brain that's like, hey, I have to go soon. And then your muscles tighten up to hold the pee in until you can get to the bathroom. And then when you relax your pelvic floor muscles, if females, we mostly sit, some men sit, some stand, but then you relax your pelvic floor muscles and that your bladder is a muscle that's pushing the urine out for you. So you shouldn't have to push when you pee. You should just relax your muscles by sitting down and breathing, and your bladder pushes the urine out for you. So don't push when you pee. When you're starting and stopping your stream, it's like either your bladder's not contracting well or your pelvic floor muscles are so tense that they're not relaxing well. So it's what we call a staccato stream, or if you have like a hard time starting your urinary stream, we call that urinary hesitancy. And it's like your pelvic floor muscles don't relax well. And so your bladder's like trying to push the pee out, but it can't overcome that muscle tension.
Okay, fascinating.
So I'm like, get them to pelvic floor therapy.
You're solving all the problems. Okay, another problem. This is a girlfriend of mine. She doesn't feel like she has a leakage problem, but if she's out or even at home and she knows she's about to use the bathroom, if something delays her, like she has little kids, if a little kid needs something and she was about to use the bathroom or public restroom and all the stalls are full, she will just about pee her pants, just in
Yeah.
like taking her pants down.
Yeah. So there's two types of leakage that happen. One is called stress incontinence. So stress incontinence is when we leak with jumping rope or coughing or sneezing, or when there's like pressure in the abdomen that kind of goes on the bladder. Our muscles can't support that and we leak. The other type of incontinence is called urge urinary incontinence. And urge incontinence happens when we have a strong urge to go and that bladder is not relaxing. Like we can't tighten our muscles well enough and the bladder's not relaxing to say, okay, chill until I get to the bathroom. The bladder's still going, I gotta go, I gotta go. And the muscles aren't kind of telling it to chill out as well. So that's not uncommon. So there's two things that could be going on. One, if you're overfilling your bladder, like the normal frequency to pee is every 2 to 4 hours. So if you're like waiting 4 hours, 5 hours, 6 hours, and you're delaying the urge, by the time you get there, it's like I'm so full that my muscles can't hold it in and then I just leak. So that can happen. The other thing is that your pelvic floor muscles aren't communicating well with your bladder. So when you're going, I gotta go, those sphincters should tighten up and they should say, bladder, chill out. I've got to wait in line or I've got to help my kid first and then I can go pee. So if those muscles aren't communicating with the bladder, it could be a muscle issue where we go, okay, we've got to address the muscles. They could be weak, they could be tense, they could be uncoordinated, and we've got to train them to better communicate with the bladder. A lot of people just go on medication for this, right? You just get on some sort of overactive bladder medication, but then those can have side effects like constipation or dry mouth, and then you're dealing with another issue. So I would say it's really important to kind of address the pelvic floor piece if you do have a bladder health issue to see if it can help. And I go over some of the urge incontinence stuff in the book too, like
Right.
taking deep breaths and doing some pelvic floor contractions and distracting yourself and different techniques you can use to try to delay the urge to get to the bathroom.
Okay, that's great. Okay, last one. And this is very personal. So, for the person that shared this with me, thank you for sharing. She said she has suffered with constipation for years and years and years. And she wonders if that has damaged her pelvic floor.
Chronic constipation is probably the most common GI complaint that we have in the United States.
Really?
And so you're not alone, 100%. It is the most common gastrointestinal complaint that people go see the doctor for. I mean, kids experience it, older people experience it. A lot of it has to do with lifestyle, like we're not moving enough, we're not hydrated enough, medication side effects. Also, our diet, when you're eating more natural foods, less processed foods, if you're cutting off your fluids at 6:30, you're not getting hydrated enough, and then it's leading to constipation as well. So there's a lot of factors in our lifestyle that are contributing. What happens with constipation is that, you have poop that kind of moves through your stomach and then your small intestines, and then all the remains go into what we call your colon or your large intestine. When you start getting backed up, your colon just gets really sluggish and kind of sleepy. And then it's like now by the time things get to the end where they need to empty and get out of your body, they're like hard stools, they're difficult to empty. So some of it could be slow transit through the colon. The other thing is that those sphincters not relaxing. We see a lot of people when we teach them to push or bear down for bowel movements, they're like, I don't know how to do that, or they're doing the wrong thing, or they have tension and they can't kind of relax their pelvic floor muscles. So it's a little bit of working on the abdomen and the colon, but then also working on the pelvic floor to make sure that you can relax well to empty. So you haven't damaged your pelvic floor, but there's likely a pelvic floor component here that needs to be addressed. This is the tension category where you need to work on breathing, relaxation. I love yoga, like child's pose and happy baby to relax the sphincters. Also doing just a massage to your abdomen and a nice circular motion to help kind of move stool through. And then looking at fiber intake, hydration, I like to take magnesium citrate supplements at nighttime. I take these little gummies. It's called Natural Calm, and that helps keep your stool really soft. You can take Miralax, but you should be pooping anywhere between 3 times a day to 3 times a week. And if you're outside of that range, if you're going less frequently than that, you're kind of in the constipation category. So you haven't ruined your pelvic floor, but chronic straining can weaken your pelvic floor. So we really want to address the constipation. Constipation can also lead to bladder leakage because there's only so much space in your pelvis. And if it's full of poop, it's going to push on your bladder and cause more urgency and leakage potentially. So I always say, let's work on the pooping problems first. And sometimes the bladder issues can clear up as well.
Oh, that's fascinating. I'm such a fan of your Instagram, not just your book. And on Instagram, you gave tips on how to survive a long car trip, to not have sciatic nerve pain. I blame my Peloton. I really want to be a Peloton girl, but every time, no matter how I do the fit test and all, it always messes with my
Oh,
sciatic nerve. So
no.
I've finally gotten it under control. RIP my pandemic Peloton. But I'm very sensitive about anything that's going to mess with my sciatic nerve. So travel, Southwest airline seats, that'll get me. You have great tips. Share some of those tips to protect us when we have to sit for a long time. But
Yeah.
also, will you talk about the relationship between your pelvic floor and your sciatic nerve?
So your pelvis is this ring of bones, this bony skeleton ring of bones, and your pelvic floor muscles sit at the very bottom of that. They're kind of like the bottom of the basket, but you have 36 muscles that attach to the pelvis. So all of these hip muscles and abdominal muscles and back muscles and pelvic floor muscles are connected. And so when you maybe have a weak hip, that can kind of rotate your thigh in, cause some tension on your pelvic floor muscles, cause some tension on a muscle called the piriformis muscle.
Mm-hmm.
And your sciatic nerve comes from your low back and then kind of just underneath that piriformis muscle down the back of your thigh. So if that hip muscle is really tight or spasmed or overactive, it's going to cause irritation on that nerve. And so oftentimes we'll go up to the back and say, let's clear your back, Allie, and make sure that there's no issues there. But you also have to look at your hip muscles and make sure that, you are not, I always say, you're not rotating your thighs in or crossing your legs all the time. Even how you're sleeping, I love people to kind of put a pillow between their knees so their hip isn't always kind of, rolled forward. And then I love to get a little tennis ball or a massage ball and roll out the glute muscles and the hip muscles, on the ground or against the wall. And that releases a lot of the tension on those nerves. And then even looking at your posture, if you're kind of slouched forward, if we're kind of rounded shoulders, if we're tensing our glutes and our pelvic floor all the time because we're stressed because of traffic or carpool, all of these things kind of can be puzzle pieces as to how did we get this sciatic nerve pain? What's interesting about our medical system is oh, you've got sciatic nerve pain, let's do a nerve block, or let's do, we want to treat the symptoms, but we have to think what's leading to this? How do we get to the root cause of this? And it could be muscle tension, posture, weak hip muscles, tense hip muscles, these sorts of things. So it's very addressable. It's not comfortable, but it really is something that can be relieved.
Yeah, it took almost a year for it to go away. It started in the back of my thigh. And then I couldn't figure out what it was. Maybe 8 months I went along with this strange pain at the side of my lower leg, right underneath the side of my knee, and I finally went to an orthopedist just to see what was wrong, and he said, "There's absolutely nothing wrong with your knee, but have you ever had sciatic nerve pain?" And I said, "Yeah," and he goes, "Well, that's the end of your sciatic nerve. You're just gonna
Yeah.
have to keep stretching and wait for it to get better." And it was frustrating, of course, that it was still my sciatic nerve, but there was something wonderful about learning, like, "Oh, if I take care of this, if I keep stretching this out and being good to it, it'll go away." And
Yeah.
thankfully, it's gone away, but it's a thing. So, say I'm flying, and what is it about the airline seats that could trigger your sciatic nerve pain? Do we need to make sure we're leaned back a little more? How do we need to position our body in an airline seat to not feel this way?
I know, it's so hard, and so, prolonged sitting is a exacerbating factor for sciatic nerve pain because you're just putting pressure right on that nerve. So one of my little hacks that I have people do is take a tennis ball with them and stick it right under their thigh, like, right on their hamstring, and that just, like, lifts up that butt cheek a little bit so that you don't have as much pressure on the nerve. But I would say that, before you even get on the plane, I would say take a tennis ball, roll out your glutes and do some massage to the area, do some figure four stretching, that kind
Mhm.
of figure four stretch or pigeon pose stretches the piriformis muscle. And then when you're sitting, the best kind of position is this L shape where the back is upright and then your thighs are parallel to the ground. What happens a lot with airplanes is once we kind of lean back a little bit, we get into this kind of not L position. So we're slouching, we're doing what we call sacral sitting. So our pelvis is tucked under, and that can kind of cause more tension on those hips. So it's not comfortable to sit in this upright position. Sometimes we need to put a pillow behind our back, but being more upright kind of takes some of the pressure. You sit on your sit bones instead of sitting on your muscles, and then that can take some of the pressure off as well.
Oh, that makes perfect sense. You mentioned not crossing your legs too much. I have been dedicated to this for the past 10 years of not sitting with my legs crossed for long periods of time, but it is so comfortable to do it.
So comfortable.
Why do we not want to sit with our legs crossed for long periods of time?
If you want to sit with your legs crossed, it's not a bad thing. But if you have pelvic floor tension issues, I often tell people, like, I would just kind of unwind them or switch sides more often. We just start to develop these movement patterns that if you do one thing all the time, we just get a little bit out of balance. And so it could be like, oh, we rotate more to this side, or our back hurts more this way, or our pelvic floor gets tighter on this side. It's really funny because I see a lot of postpartum moms in my practice, and they always have, like, tightness on one side of their pelvic floor. And then they're like, why that side and not this side? I'm like, well, which side do you hold your baby on? And it's like their hip is always popped out. And they're
Yep.
like, oh, well, that makes sense because it's just something we're doing all the time now that we don't think about how it influences our pelvis and pelvic floor. Crossing your legs isn't going to cause pelvic floor problems. But if you have something like sciatica, I'd be like, switch sides so that you're not doing it more frequently. Cross at the ankles instead of at the legs so that you can kind of keep that upright position. You just want to think about neutral as much as possible.
Right.
And so, but I'm short. So I'm often like, slouching because my feet can't reach the ground or the back of the chair. So, you want to try to either put a pillow behind your back or a little step stool underneath your feet so that you can stay kind of in this more upright, relaxed position, not super
Mhm.
tense, but just kind of not sacral sitting or kind of rolling your thighs in all the time.
I feel like no matter what height you are, we should all agree that tall stools are the enemy. No one sits comfortably. No one knows what to do with our feet. They're
I
just
know.
into
There's no
humanity.
back. I'm like, I
No.
love a bench. I'm like, ask my husband. He's like, anywhere we go, Sarah's looking for a seat. If we're at the park, I'm like, I'm on the bench. So, I love a chair. So it is one of those things that I'm like, they're just not always practical and they're not comfortable. I mean, they're hard seats. And I'm like, we've got our little tailbones and sit bones that are just right on that hard surface. So,
Yeah.
I'm
Do
with
you
you.
wanna sit at the bar and have dinner? No. No, I do not. Don't give me a tall table. For every woman listening who's had a baby vaginally, how does childbirth affect us in the short term and the long term?
There are 3 times in our life that our pelvic floor probably goes through the biggest transition. One is pregnancy. So not even how you give birth, but just pregnancy itself changes your pelvic floor. So whether you've had a C-section or a vaginal birth, your pelvic floor has changed and likely gotten weaker. Second is birth. Even if you've had a C-section, your pelvic floor is affected, but vaginal birth is a stretching, a lengthening of your pelvic floor. If you're pushing for a long period of time, that can kind of weaken your ligaments and your pelvic floor muscles. And then most women have what we call perineal tearing, which is when there's a tear at the base of the vaginal opening that goes into the pelvic floor muscles. And then once that scar heals, it's like those muscles aren't moving and relaxing the same way they were prior to that. And so there's some compromised function there. So pregnancy, birth, and menopause are the three biggest risk factors for developing pelvic floor issues. What my struggle is that why aren't we integrating pelvic floor care during these times for women? Because we know that those issues are going to pop up. And yet, like, we get no support, no education. And that's really my mission, is to kind of make this information more accessible, kind of more standard of care. What we see a lot after birth is painful sex because of the scar tissue at the base of the vaginal opening. Even a C-section scar can kind of tighten your fascia and your pelvic floor muscles to cause painful sex. And we also have vaginal dryness from breastfeeding or lactation when our estrogen levels are low, and that can cause discomfort with intercourse. All of those are very addressable. The other thing is we see a lot of weakness. So urinary leakage is probably one of the number one things we see after giving birth. And the research is showing that if at 3 months postpartum you're still leaking, you likely will still be leaking at 12 months postpartum if you don't go to therapy and get exercises. So when you see your doctor and they're like, oh, just give it more time, that's not a reasonable answer, because we know that it will likely not get better. And so this is where we really need to help women rebuild their pelvic floor and core strength, help prevent leakage, help improve pelvic organ prolapse, help regain their cores in their front because they may have weakness or separation. And we're just not giving women the resources. I mean, it's really my mission, I think, to help integrate pelvic floor care into the postpartum recovery process for women, because our bodies just don't rebuild themselves back up, and we really need that support afterwards.
Yeah, it's so important. One of my team members this morning, she said her daughter just had a baby and she was going to pelvic floor therapy right after. And she said, no one ever talked about it.
I
Like,
know.
I've never heard about it. So for everyone listening, if your daughter or your daughter-in-law is pregnant, or if you're pregnant, this is a key part, because of course, women getting told for so many years, just give it time, when time will only make things worse. What a disaster for us.
And it's sad, because I think that we feel so, our bodies are not what we kind of always love after giving birth. We feel like we've kind of sacrificed our physical selves a little bit. And yet it's like when you say, oh, like, go back to working out, you'll feel better. I'm like, well, I'm not going to work out if I pee my pants, right? Or like, oh,
Exactly.
like, start rebuilding your relationship and, like, with intimacy. I'm like, well, I'm not going to have sex if it's painful. And so there are different things that, I think we don't realize, like the behind the scenes, closed door, in the bathroom challenges that we're experiencing as women that no one is talking about openly until, the Vagina Whisperer or social media or now this podcast. So I always say we want to normalize the conversations, not the problems. And I think we've normalized pelvic floor problems for so long. But now that we can start talking about them, we can really give women solutions like, going to pelvic floor therapy, doing online programs. I have an entire online program for pregnancy, postpartum, perimenopause, postmenopause, to really give women pelvic floor exercises to do at home.
And that's wonderful. Thank goodness for new media.
Well, and for, podcasts like this one that we're open to having these conversations so that women can really better understand their bodies and get the care they deserve.
Yeah, I never knew that I would tell tens of thousands of people that I pee my pants when I jump rope, but I'm happy to do it, because probably most of us are doing the same thing. Okay, so your book, Floored, I love the colors. I'm a book design snob, and this book cover is just stunning. As an author, I have to ask, what did you learn, or how were you changed by writing this? Because I know there's always a story back there.
I think that this was probably the hardest professional thing I've ever done in 18 years, because it's not like one and done, go speak at a conference and then you're done. It's a labor of love. I mean, an entire year of my life was getting up at 5 a.m., working before my kids woke up. My kids are 8 and 10, so they were maybe 6 and 8 when I was writing.
Mhm.
So it's like a real commitment to the long haul. I actually owned a physical therapy clinic here in New Orleans, and I sold it I still work there, but I work for the owners who were my partners at the time. so I could have the time to do this. Like, you can't keep doing all the things and then add something else. So what I learned was like, when you really want to do something, you have to create space for it. And to be writing, you need to be committed and consistent, but you also need to be creative. And when I had all of these things buzzing in my head, like, I didn't have the space to be creative and tell these stories in my own voice. So it was kind of really shutting some things out to give me that space. I don't even drink alcohol that often, but I stopped drinking. I rented an office outside of my house so I could go one day on the weekend to write. And I have a wonderfully supportive partner who helped with that. And so I learned how to say no because I'm always a yes girl and I have FOMO, but I was like, no, I have deadlines. I've got to get this done. So there was a lot of ways that I really learned how to kind of take out some of the extra stuff to commit to what was a real priority for me. And I learned so much about not just pelvic floor health and the new research, but just about like when you work really hard at something and commit to it, like what you can kind of manifest and create. But it doesn't happen overnight. I think we all see the result, but there's so much behind the scenes, as you know, that goes into it.
Oh, yeah. And I tell everyone that writing a book is like punching myself in the nose for 6 months. It's really hard work.
That's so funny. I always say it's like raising a kid to go to college. Like, people are always like, oh, it's like you birthed a baby. I'm like, no, I feel like I raised a kid, because once the book is out, you're like, okay, go out in the world and fly. Like, my work here is done, you know?
Yeah.
So that's kind of how I felt. Like, now that it's out, I'm like, okay, spread the love, do your thing, but like, my work is done on that side.
No, it's terrific. Okay, what have we not talked about that's really important that you want women to know about pelvic floor health?
I think that this is something that we often don't realize we have problems, or that we even have a pelvic floor till later in life. But I think if you have daughters, if you've got grandkids, it's really important to start these conversations young. I think if we would have opened the doors to these conversations, in health class, when we're talking about, periods and maybe sex ed, which, I don't even know if places are still doing that. But if we start talking about the pelvic floor, then we as women know, like, oh, this muscle exists and this is what it's responsible for. And if I leak when I cheer, that's not normal. Or if I have pain the first time I have sex, or when I'm trying to put a tampon on, that's not normal. I think if we can really integrate pelvic health care and education, at least at a very young age, then it becomes very normal to know where to go to for help, instead of letting these symptoms go on for so long, feeling like our bodies are broken, not being able to do the things we want to do, like travel or have sex or jump rope or cheer. And we don't feel confident in our bodies. Like, there's so many things externally that people can see that we worry about, but internally, a lot of people are struggling. So I think no matter what your age or stage, I think it's beneficial now to learn about your body, educate the next generation so that they know better and then they know more than we do. And we can really start bringing this care into every stage of life as women, from periods to sexual activity to pregnancy, postpartum, postmenopause.
Oh, so good. So good. Okay, ready for fun questions?
Yes.
Okay, first one. What about a song that you have on repeat lately?
Benson Boone. My kids call me a boonie. He has Mystical Magical, which is like the new one that I'm listening to, that is just so fun and upbeat. And I have a longer commute for my middle schooler right now. So every morning we kind of listen to that, and it's like a really upbeat, peppy song. So I'm loving Benson Boone right now.
I love that. Yeah, we'll link everything in the show notes. What about a TV show or movie that you enjoyed?
I'm a big crime documentary junkie, and I just watched Amy Bradley is Missing on Netflix, and it's been out for a little while, but it was just kind of an interesting show. Like, and I go deep into crime documentary, so this was the most recent one that I did. I love a crime documentary, so I'm like, give me more.
Are you secretly feeling like you missed your calling in life, that you could have totally been a detective?
No, absolutely not. I feel like a pelvic floor detective.
There
I
you
love that. But I don't know why, like, shows like Dateline or 2010, they're relaxing to me. I have siblings and we all love these on a Friday night. And my husband's like, what is wrong with you? I'm like, I don't know, but it's just so relaxing. So
That is
that
hilarious.
I have no explanation for it, but it is enjoyable.
No, I love it. Okay, what about a product that you have told somebody that they need to get?
So right now, of course, we're all into skincare. I actually use a skincare serum called Lion Pose, and I'm Asian, and so I have darker skin. So I did all these like lasers and retinol, and none of them were working. And two women of color, and they're Indian, came up with skincare products for women who have more melanated skin. And so I'm using Line Pose to address some dark spots and coverage, but it really feels good to have products that are kind of specific for different skin tones.
Mhm.
And so I just kind of was chatting with their founder the other day. And so it was just kind of exciting to feel like we're putting things out there to support all different types of women. So their Lion Pose serum is what I use every night, and I love it.
Okay, I love that. We'll definitely link it. And what about a book you've enjoyed lately?
I just finished The Nightingale by Kristen
So
Hanna.
good.
So good. At the end of the summer after my book tour, we did a wonderful family vacation to Portugal. So I had a really long
Mhm.
flight. And one of my coworkers had read the book and said, it was so good, I couldn't put it down. I love The Woman by Kristen Hanna. So I said, let me just download this on my Kindle. And I could not put it down. It was so, so good. And so if you haven't read The Nightingale, I highly recommend it. It was just an amazing book. I loved it.
Agreed, 100%. Okay, you are a delight. I've learned so much from your book. I've learned even more from talking to you. Tell everyone where to find you, but speak for a moment about a course you have available for women who are in perimenopause, because I feel like that's a great resource for my audience.
So I have a perimenopause menopause program that has educational modules about your pelvic floor, about what's changing, everything from sexual health, period changes, pelvic organ prolapse, post-surgical, because a lot of us, either after cancer or either after a hysterectomy go through surgical menopause and it's quick. Bladder health issues, pooping issues. So kind of all of these pelvic floor problems that kind of start to pop up that you don't even know could be related to perimenopause. And then I also have body weight workouts and weighted workouts using strength training and weights. And they're 10 to 15 minutes. They're with weights, but they're pelvic floor focused and pelvic floor friendly. So if you're jumping rope, if you are, wanting to get back in the gym and you're like, how do I know that what I'm doing is right for my pelvic floor? This is the place to start. You can find it on my website. It's thevaginawhisperer.com, and everybody gets a 7-day free trial. So join it, start it, check it out for a week. I hope that you love it. I'm like, watch all the videos in that week. If you don't want to continue, like, at least you've got the knowledge. But these are really great workouts that you can do from home. And, not everyone has access to a pelvic floor therapist. There's only so
Mhm.
many of us across the country. We don't all take insurance. So it's one of those things where I want women to have access to this info through my book, Floored, and then also my online programs on my website.
Awesome. Well, thanks again for coming on the show. This has been great.
Thanks so much for having me.
How great is she, right? I told you this is a special one. She is phenomenal. I'm going to give away 3 copies of her book. Be sure to share this episode on Instagram, tag me, tag Sarah. And if you're watching on YouTube, thank you. Be sure to subscribe and like it and leave a comment. And as always, I'm so grateful that we get to spend this time together every week. Thank you for investing in you. This week, we're investing in your physical health, but your physical health really matters. You want to be able to do the things that you want to do in life without feeling embarrassment or shame or having difficulties. I know for many of us in this sandwich generation where we're taking care of the younger generation, but we're taking care of the older generation, this is a huge issue for women as they get older. Let's make sure we're not the women that this is going to be a huge issue for us in 20 years or 30 years or 40 years. So thank you for taking care of you. I believe in the gifts that God has placed inside of you. I believe in your dreams. I believe that you are making this world a better place. That's why you're here every week. You're learning something. You're growing. You're building a healthier, stronger, and more joyful life one step at a time. God has uniquely created you to stand strong and bring something special to this world that only you can bring. So let me remind you, you're smarter than you think. You're stronger than you give yourself credit for, and you're braver than you feel in the hard moments. And the best part is you are just getting started. You are capable of incredible things because the Spirit of God lives in you. The dreams in your heart aren't there by accident. God placed them there, and He's giving you everything you need to live them out. It is my joy to get to coach you and cheer you on and remind you that with God, you have what it takes. So keep stepping up, keep showing up, and keep loving well because you can't break a woman who gets her strength from God. I hope you have a great day, and I'll talk to you again soon. So sorry, I forgot something. Hold on. Batteries are dead. Darn it. I'm going to start a new recording. I'm so sorry.